Welcome back to the Additive Snack podcast. I'm your host, Fabian Alefeld, and today we're covering the last episode of the season. In this season, we covered various guests, all in the medical space, and we also focused on various verticals of the medical industry. In this final episode, we've invited one of the leading additive manufacturing contract manufacturers in the medical, aviation, and even other industries. And that is Precision ADM, Precision Advanced Digital Manufacturing. Today, we're welcoming Derek Van to the show. Derek is the VP of Medical and Industrial Sales and Business Development at Precision ADM. And he has an extensive experience in building successful additive manufacturing production chains. Derek, welcome to Additive Snack.
Wow, thank you very much. That's a very nice introduction. Thank you very much.
For sure. So let's dive right in and start with you and Precision ADM. How did you get into additive, and who is Precision ADM?
All right, great question. It goes back about 8 years ago, where our president, Martin Petrak, had come up to me and asked me to join an exciting new venture that he had going, and it was called Precision ADM. I didn't know much about additive at the time, but he said, you're going to want to start to do some research. You're going to want to start to have some good understanding of this, and we'd love to have you come on board and grow our sales department. I said yes. Obviously, the learning curve was quite steep. So not only what I learned on the road at the trade shows and whatnot, I was able to bring that back to our team. And yeah, from there it was an exciting, very adventurous, and it hasn't stopped with every day and the changes that happens in our industry all the time. Here I am, 8 years later. Yeah.
That's the exciting part about additive. It changes daily. And if I remember correctly, you came from a very different career out of manufacturing, right?
Absolutely. So where I cut my teeth was as an entrepreneur here in Winnipeg, and I started a small cellular phone business when I was about 21 years old. So I had run that business for 15 years with a partner here. We had 4 different locations, about 40 employees. And we ended up selling the business about 10 years ago. So it was time for me to make a change. And then, of course, there's a significant amount of differences from selling cell phones, and it's very transactional and all the rest of that. But what it looks like in the industry that we're currently here in additive, it's far more technical. The selling cycles are far longer, and the relationships are much deeper for sure. But I do have to say the beginning of all of that with cell phones and understanding business, I'll have that for the rest of my life. A very, very exciting time for me. And I learned at a young age a bunch of different things that you're going to carry on forever. So
I can only imagine. And it's very different levels of capital investments as well. And now you sell full solutions and production capacity really to end users. What Precision ADM?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Precision ADM. Obviously, we're a contract manufacturer specializing in additive manufacturing. Our quality systems include AS 9100, 9001, ISO 13485. We have controlled goods. We're pretty well, if not the most certified additive manufacturing company here in Canada for all the needs. And of course, on the medical side, the majority of our clients are in the US.
Okay, very interesting. And let's talk about that a bit more. So what types of applications are running right now in your systems, in your facility?
Yeah, right now, medical is probably 70% of our business. And we see a lot of different applications that are going through. Probably one of the biggest opportunities is tibio trays that run through on a significant amount of volume. We have lower extremity projects that are going through as well, 2 foot surgery projects that I probably can't say too much about because they're still in the development stages and getting to production. But yeah, it's definitely that situation where, on the medical side, we get to see a bunch of different types of projects, deal with a bunch of different types of new companies that are up and coming, and then all the way from where they start when they're prototyping all the way to where they go to serial production.
Super interesting. And what makes you guys unique, obviously, is that you're not only focused on the medical vertical, you're also in a few others. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. And that's a very good point. Our quality systems run from our aerospace side into medical, and then, of course, the quality system that allows us to even do, oil and gas. But a good kind of segue into understanding the busyness and the selling cycles and whatnot is simply what COVID did to us. So COVID stalled the aerospace when it came to production, R&D, and whatnot. And the
Hmm.
whole, on the medical side, that just kept the business running steadily all the way through COVID. And then, of course, you notice, in the last 12 months since the end of the pandemic, that a lot more aerospace activity is there. You see the OEMs re-engaging in the on the R&D side, and
Hmm.
then we see kind of production coming back. And I should probably mention on the energy side as well, because we already, with our clients on oil and gas, we are already seeing an increase year over year. We're only about 6 months into our fiscal year here,
Hmm.
and our are already exceeding what we did last year with them. The MRO activities is very, very exciting for gas turbine engines on land. I think you're going to see a few really significant, maybe even announcements in the coming weeks and months with what we're able to do on that side. And then, I didn't even mention like micro turbines that we're working on the R&D side. So it's very exciting. It's getting these projects and that finish line and into serial production, like we talked on the medical side. But it's very, very interesting right now.
Super interesting. And you're living proof that additive manufacturing allows for supply chain agility. But if you're not locked in like you guys on one vertical, where you obviously see counteracting demands just based on the economic environment that we're in right now. And I just listened to a podcast this morning. Now we're heading towards deflation. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
We all have to be a bit more agile, and
Oh
it's
gosh.
more difficult to plan. That really allows you to maintain that agility. And what's super
I do have a funny story. Keep your train of thought there. But Martin's mom, who's our president,
you okay?
she said to the three of us as we were in Martin's kitchen, and I grew up with Martin since we were childhood friends.
Yeah.
When we were 20 years old, just before or 18, just before we were getting into university, just
Uh
like
huh.
what you said. So this is probably 30 years ago. She said, if you guys aren't able to change and adjust and be agile, that's the world's changing. So you need to do that. And Marquetta said that to Martin and I, God, 30 years ago. So sorry, I
Yeah,
thought I'd
exactly.
say that. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and it's more true than ever.
Yeah.
It's very hard to plan. But if we have that technology that allows us to maintain this agility also in manufacturing, I think that's huge. And what
Yeah.
you said earlier, your medical clients are in production. You are
Yeah.
in R&D stages in the aviation industry, as well as in energy, but also MRO. So just really maintaining equipment,
Oh,
leveraging
yeah.
additive manufacturing. Can you talk a little bit about what the processes look like to take somebody from those R&D stages all the way into production, and how do you guys guide these organizations and the engineers through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll just stick with the common theme on the medical side, and I'll walk through. I developed, or we developed here, a three-step process for our medical device companies,
Hmm.
and that's taken them all the way through the prototyping, concept, proof of concept, where simply they have a great idea, it's on their computer screen, but they haven't yet felt it, and wasn't quite tangible, or it wasn't on a boardroom table yet for them to kind of really review, or maybe even at the early stages, you're looking for investors. So at that point, it's always nice to have something. And that's, I refer to as step one. So you have something, it's now tangible, you can show people. And additive manufacturing simply allows you to turn whatever's on your computer screen and have it quickly in your hand, where traditional manufacturing methods never did that. And then step two is after you have completed, your prototype, you got something that you're quite happy with. Now what you're doing, you're working with us, and we're simply we're validating all the manufacturing steps. We have full traceability on all on your part from when it's on the AM machine all the way through the post processing. We're basically at this point, we're creating, all the information and supporting documentation you need for a 510K or whatever regulatory path that you may be on. And then, of course, step
Mm-hmm.
3 is where every single one of the clients wants to get to, and that's serial production. So once you get into serial production, that's the promised land. You've already you've went through the full process. Quite frankly, I'm just stating step 1 to 3. It's the words maybe come out a little easier than all the hard work that's in engineering and development that's actually needed in those three steps. And I'm sure there's many steps inside each one of them. But that's how we've broken it down internally, and that's how we walk our clients through each one of these processes. I should just mention one more thing just quickly about that, and it's the clients can engage us in each one of those steps. You simply don't have to start with step 1, where we know all the projects do begin. You may already be an OEM that is having current supply chain issues and looking for a contract manufacturer to take that over, and that's where we can step in and help you, of course.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that concept a bit more in a second. But before we jump there, it also sounds straightforward and easy to serve various industries. How straightforward and easy is it? What are the similarities between the aviation and the medical industry when it comes to additive and to production? And also, what are some of those differences that might make it a bit challenging?
Yeah, that's a good one, because when we got into this and fully, what people don't understand here in Winnipeg, actually, we have one of probably the second largest aerospace contingents in Canada. So our background comes from the Orthopedic Innovation Center, which we're going to touch on here in a moment. But our background was medical, but understanding the aerospace side and certainly having that contingent here in Winnipeg, that allowed for an appreciation of what it takes in getting back to your original question, and having the quality systems that we have. There are people think the industries, because they are so very different, there are quite a lot of similarities, and the similarities, having those quality systems in place. A lot of the materials we use, we see them, titanium, cobalt, chrome, we see them on either side of the fence. And then, of course, you get into the manufacturing as well, and very, very similar. The difference is that when we get into the minutia and run it through the manufacturing, it is into maybe inspection might be a little bit different. There's a few different inspection techniques that are done on the aerospace side that you don't see, quite frankly, on the medical side. And then how we validate our parts. We use terminology like PQ on the medical side, and then you don't see it on the aerospace side. So there are a few things, but yeah, it's interesting that actually coming from the medical side allowed us to do what we did on the aerospace side. So
yeah, super interesting. And as we said, that's how you maintain your agility and frankly also keep your production capacity up. And talking about production capacity, a lot of organizations, when they're getting into additive, they have one big question, that is, should we vertically integrate or should we use an external organization to produce? Can you talk a little bit about those decisions that your customers made to go with Precision ADM as a production partner, and what are those criteria that they think about when selecting you guys?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I think any small to mid-level company would look at that, right? Like you simply, I almost come back to I look at it a little bit differently, and I almost come back to, what are we good at, right? And I think every company would just have to ask themselves that. So when you look at these small guys that are a mid-level medical designer, manufacturer who's developing a new product, so that is what they're good at. Are they good at manufacturing? And of course, the barriers to entry are the costs associated with buying this equipment. The equipment could be, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or depending on your capacity, it could be into the millions of dollars, right? And then simply you have a machine on your floor and you haven't built anything yet. So what does that look like as far as a steep learning curve? And of course, EOS is great for understanding, supporting client, not suggesting that that's not the case. But in the end, when they close the door, they're alone. They're trying to figure things out, right? That could be quite steep. So those are the types of things that I think go into working with a contract manufacturer like us, who already has the infrastructure in place, already has the engineering horsepower, already has the experience. We make good parts. This is what we do. FDA registered. We've been there. We've gone through the process. We've dealt with others. So I think clients at that point, to want to lend themselves to dealing with a company like this, like us, that has the experience, that can simply walk them through each one of these processes, understand it. And then, of course, not every project goes smoothly, like quite frankly.
Sure.
So that's why we are so engineering rich on our side, so that when these types of things come up, then we can work with them, fix any problems that we might run into, and then get to where everybody wants to, is steady state production.
Yeah. I think to just summarize that, I think you touched on it perfectly. The two big hurdles are CapEx. It's a capital intensive industry. Manufacturing in general, that's just the game, right?
Yep.
But also, especially when we talk about additive manufacturing, you need talent. And building
Yes.
talents and buying talent and hiring talent is not that easy. So it's definitely a investment, not only financially, but and retaining talent, which
You
is not that
you
easy.
you touch on a perfect point. And when we, quite frankly, when we started the business, or when Martin started the business 10 years ago, and we finally got going about 8 years ago, there was no such thing as an additive manufacturing engineer. Although we have a wonderful engineering school here in Manitoba, University of Manitoba, typically our mechanical engineers were people that we hired, and they wanted to be a part and work with this technology. But we grew our our staff, our engineering staff, and kind of grew them from the start. And although very, very smart people, we just didn't, you kind of gain that experience by hiring these people and growing the people. And that very, very exciting, because our team is so young. And now we have our young at 8 years ago, and now we simply have that experience and then went through so many different projects. Yeah, but you touch on a very good point, because back then it just simply didn't exist. And now, of course, our industry has changed all that, with the university having programs in additive and what.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the key engagements that we also see with our customers, is to build
Yes.
that workforce for
Yeah.
those companies. And I think what we also see a lot is definitely a hybrid approach, right? I do want to build up expertise in additive manufacturing as an OEM internally, and I may start a center of excellence, but once I develop applications, I want to push those into the supply chain to only focus on innovation, or also bring in a partner like you guys for innovation projects, because you guys do see so many different types of
Yes.
applications across industries, which I think can also be a huge innovation driver for OEMs. And
Oh, yeah.
I want to get your point on that, because you see so many different types of applications. Where is the industry going from your perspective? Not only in AM as general, but also in AM and medical. And how are you guys pushing the industry forward?
Like I mentioned, outsourcing, we have seen that a common theme with some of our clients right now, where they had some of that know-how in-house. But when I hadn't mentioned this before, but I wonder if some of their overhead is just so high. We're dealing with a company
Mm-hmm.
like Precision ADM that's a little smaller, nimble. Like, maybe we can get those parts to them at a reduced cost, and get to where their parts are now more attractive in that regard. And of course, they have all those manufacturing processes dialed in that we can emulate. A
Okay.
few other things that I think are playing heavy in our industry as well is the software development. I think allowing our machines to run even faster, more efficient. Smart Fusion that EOS has developed, I think that's amazing technology that's definitely helping us right now. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
material development. Traditional materials that we have seen through traditional manufacturing methods, they weren't always there on the additive side. So now what that has done, with over the course of the last few years in material development, that has opened a whole bunch of new doors for applications that we are seeing, especially on the turbine side. We just simply didn't have those materials at the time. And now we
Mm-hmm.
are getting there, where we have the materials, and the develop is moving forward very fast. I think we probably should mention AI. It's playing so heavy in so many different industries, and I'm sure it's going to do the same with us as we grow and different efficiencies are gained. And then probably the biggest thing that's happened to us that potentially could change the industry as well is our relationships. And those relationships right now, with that announcement that we've had over the last 6 months with EOS, TicoMet, and the Orthopedic Innovation Center, not only is that make Precision ADM unique, But I think that's going to make a unique offering to the whole medical industry, and maybe we can take this model out of medical and bring it to other industries as well. So in that, the whole idea of this relationship with EOS, TECOMET, the Orthopedic Innovation Center, and Precision ADM was to try to get more development on the medical side on EOS platforms. And you simply have a match made in heaven with all those companies. You have TECOMET, the largest contract manufacturer of traditionally manufactured medical devices in the world. You have EOS that has simply the best technology when it comes to metal AM. You have the Orthopedic Innovation Center here in Winnipeg, that ASTM standard testing and validation for all medical devices. And then you have your additive manufacturing experts in Precision ADM. So I think that relationship and allowing clients, like the whole idea is to make it easy for the clients. So the clients, like, this should not be confusing. They should be able to, in the development of what they have, again, on their computer screen, they should be able to bring that to the market. And there should be something available for them to do that in the market. And this relationship, we feel, does that. And then the last thing that we really are pushing is the speed to market, because we fully understand that in the development, things take time. And it's typically a long development process of understanding and the testing and whatnot. But if additive can help in any way to streamline those processes and get your product quickly to market, then that's the technology should be used for that.
All of these points are very interesting, and from my perspective are actually a testament of the continuous maturity of additive manufacturing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you look at innovative technologies when they first hit the market, everybody is somewhat fending for themselves and is trying to be first and is trying to be the most innovative player in the market. Once you see some consolidation, you see some partnerships emerging to improve the speed to market of the end users. And once you see additive manufacturing as a technology to improve speed to market compared to conventional manufacturing, that's somewhat of a very interesting tipping point that I could certainly see additive manufacturing gaining some more momentum in the industry.
And champions now inside of each one of these companies that have fully embraced the technology, and then allow for that company to understand the technology better, and then work with companies hand in hand like Precision ADM, TECOMET, EOS, and then bring their product to market. It's really that simple.
Perfect. Simple is the perfect ending to the season, really.
Yeah.
Right? We want to make it simpler and easier for folks to get into additive manufacturing, to take out the mystery of additive. And that's really what this whole season was about. So thank you, Derek, for being on Additive Snack and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this, telling the Precision ADM story. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. So this wraps up the season of the Additive Snack podcast, as I just mentioned. A huge thank you to you, Derek, and also to all of our other guests for sharing their insights with me and our listeners out there, whether you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or now on YouTube, which we're just starting to get into as well. And as we close this chapter, please remember that the world of additive manufacturing, as we just discussed, is ever evolving. And we'll be here to keep you updated. So make sure to subscribe to the Additive Snack podcast on your favorite platform to not miss our next season and our upcoming episodes. And until then, I'm Fabian Alefeld, your host, and I'll see you next time.